welcome. I'm Maria Volchok. We are now in Ukrainian Blockchain Hub, and we have guests from Switzerland, Mr. Lars, Mr. Andrea, and Mr. Jean-Francois, if I'm not mistaken.
Very well.
Okay, thank you. So please describe in a few words what is the current situation for blockchain companies in Switzerland, which is reportedly has become last year one of the most loyal kind of paradise for blockchain companies. Is it true?
Yes, of course, it's true. I would say the success of this, the key of this success is the fact that we have a legal environment which is very clear. We know exactly what we can do, and which kind of authorization we need if there is a kind of authorization which is requested, and how to obtain it. Also from a tax point of view, we have issued guidelines how to tax companies which are active in the crypto business, in the blockchain assets. So we know exactly and we can provide legal certitude to the company which are coming in Switzerland about how to manage their business.
Like last year, Malta and other countries have become so-called blockchain paradises. This year, the Bahamas, they are trying to do the same. What's interesting for me, Malta, for example, they have proposed situational legislation for blockchain companies which would like to settle in Malta, for example. In case of Switzerland, you are adapting your current legislation for blockchain companies. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Let's say Switzerland has a different approach than other countries, as you were saying. We will not issue a blockchain law. We will more amend current law in certain point, in certain articles, in order to have these articles and this law more adapted to blockchain. What I can say is that Switzerland is issuing laws which are broadly written. You can really apply also laws that were written before the blockchain was invented to blockchain aspects. And that's make Switzerland very attractive, because you don't have to wait any time for a new law from the parliament which take years to be issued to understand if you can do this this way or the other way. You can use already written law and with interpretation understand how you can apply this to new technology like blockchain. And then what we do is that if we see that there are some aspects where we really need to modify the legislation, then okay, then we go and we modify the legislation, but our intervention is really limited to just what is necessary. So an example is what we are going to do right now, where we will introduce some rules which will declare legally binding the transfer of a token from a legal point of view, or which will declare that in case of bankruptcy, the owner of the token which were in custody by the third party can take this token back, or the introduction of a new authorization for allowing also small company to create a market for the exchange of security token.
Now you're in the period of consultation, if I'm not mistaken, and what will happen next year? Because it will be the end, probably.
Yeah, that consultation
with FINMA.
That's not with FINMA, that's with really the Swiss government, because that will be a law. So the consultation will be finished on the 28th of June. Then there will be some work on the consultation, and the Federal Department of Finance will issue the project of the law, which will go in front of the Parliament. The Parliament will discuss this law, will approve the law, and then the law will come in force. So I'm expecting to have the final draft of the law, which will be discussed by the Parliament by the end of the year. So beginning of, already maybe by the end of the year or beginning next year, the law will be discussed within the Parliament, and I can say that at the best case scenario, we will have the law be enforced by January 2021.
Okay, understood. Jean-Francois, you have created a payment system, but it doesn't accept crypto. Why?
That's correct. First of all, I started this payment system in 2011 when Bitcoin was still a novelty for geeks. So I did not foresee that it would become actually a very trustworthy asset, which it has become today thanks to institutional interest mostly. That was not the case 7-8 years ago. But also, I believe from a philosophical standpoint, that the trust of the people in a monetary system depend very much on their national pride and their national interests. So the only reason I accept 100 Swiss franc banknotes from you is that I know I can pay for my dinner with it. If, on the other hand, you give me 1 million Deutschmark printed in 1930, I know I cannot buy dinner because this currency disappeared. And after that event in the 1930s, the Germans were very smart in creating a new currency that would not suffer from hyperinflation. So I see, and they did it by backing the currency with land assets of the Federal Republic. That was very smart, and that was the foundation for the Deutschmark and for a lot of the modern fiat currencies. Now, it's the same motivation that people have when they create Bitcoin. They say we want something that cannot be hyperinflated, so we will limit by software the number of tokens issued. That's a very noble idea, but a blockchain is not the only way to realize this idea. If you have a trustworthy central bank that doesn't do stupid things, it works just as well. But this is why I don't believe that it is necessary. It is interesting, it is very useful, for example, in the case of tokenization of existing assets. I don't think it is yet a viable alternative for retail payments for everyday small amount.
Okay, but you are not a so-called true Bitcoin believer who is not so in favor of central banks and who is in favor only decentralized payments in terms of, in this case, Bitcoin. You would not give up central banks.
I would not.
You're not so much in favor of Bitcoin.
Well, I'm neutral about Bitcoin, and people who like it, I think it has its utility. It has become the digital gold. Let's face it, that's what it is. I don't think it will ever be used as a payment system because it cannot scale. Some derivatives of Bitcoin will be able to scale, but there will be other systems that enable people to do payments. You see, the problem when the idea of Bitcoin was introduced, except for the techno geeks, but for the general population, when you ask someone to use Bitcoin, you are not asking them one thing, you're asking two things. You're asking first, you will replace your paper money or your bank account money by some token, some crypto thing that we guarantee you is safe mathematically. Okay, you tell that to somebody who doesn't do math, he only believes in faith. Okay. So that is one giant psychological step, that I will trust this digital money to have the same value, the same trust environment as my paper money or my bank money. Okay. That's one step. But the second step, when you say, oh, by the way, this new money, it's not a Swiss franc, it's not a dollar, it's something new, it's something artificial. So you're asking people to take two giant leaps of faith, and that's too much. That's why it failed in the Republic.
Mr. Andrea, you're presenting company KPMG. My question is, how really now in Switzerland blockchain can help current companies which did not apply this technology?
It's actually a very good question, because applications of blockchain outside of the decentralized financial market infrastructure are very rare, and there are still lack of real proof cases. I believe that blockchain is certainly an interesting new way of transferring assets, and will certainly in one way or another continue to exist. Whether it will replace a centralized systems or not remains to be seen. As with Jean-François and also with Lars, it's fair to say we are a strong believer in the existing financial market infrastructure with central banks and central bank money, which is currently working reasonably well. Alternatives are also always welcome, and I think introducing competition, even in the monetary market, is something which brings the economy in general forward.
Understood. General question for all of you three. Now, news, which one of the most discussed Libra Association is now is Geneva based. How does it already, has it already somehow influenced Switzerland, or how it will or may influence Switzerland in the future?
Well, there are two reasons why Facebook decided to start one of the components of their system in Switzerland. One of them is because, as Lars mentioned, Switzerland offers a predictable legal environment, so it is extremely safe for a business that wants to grow in the long term to be based in a country that has well-defined categories of how tokens are handled and the legal consequences of all that. So that's one reason. The second reason, actually the creator of the Libra system is called David Marcus. He's Swiss. He started his first business in Geneva. He's a friend of mine, and he went on to head PayPal, and then he resigned from PayPal to go to Facebook. So,
so your expectations as well, please share.
I mean, certainly interesting news for Switzerland. Switzerland has always been quite an attractive location for high-tech companies. I mean, you have to imagine that Google has its research center for Europe in Switzerland, IBM has its research center in Europe, so probably not very well known outside of the country, but Switzerland is a high-tech country and has always been one. So no wonder that technologies in the field of blockchain, which merges technology with finances, find a fertile ground in Switzerland, and Geneva particularly interesting because of its international environment. So is Zug, which is, and then Ticino, by the way, also with a lot of international business.
Well, the gold processing in Ticino, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But my point, I think Libra will facilitate the adoption of blockchain-based technology. Think about it next year.
Because this issue actually was discussed. Somebody said it will help. Somebody, they already claim it because it's centralized. It's not still so. It's not a cryptocurrency.
Of course, it's centralized.
Yeah.
We are not saying that's. I mean, I have.
It's not another cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I mean, there are someone saying, "Oh, it's even not a crypto." Honestly, I don't care. What is important is that next year we will have billions of people. What is 1.5, 2 billion of people, which will have the opportunity or have a wallet for cryptographic assets. Even if it's centralized, don't care, it's education. They will be educated how to use a cryptographic wallet. And once I know how to use Libra, it's easier to understand also how I can use other cryptographic assets, which could be Bitcoin, could be a tokenized shares, could be a currency issued by a central bank. So that's what is very important about the Libra project is the education that it will bring to the crowd.
So it will bring mass adoption
Yeah.
afterwards. Thank you so much for coming.